Good evening, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the new episode of Be Invincible podcast. And we have Emilio with us, a great personality. And one of the most important fact of which I learned that his TED Talk has been trending. And I want to understand more about that. But why don't I introduce, or maybe I let Emilio introduce himself, and then we can take this podcast forward. Emilio, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thank you very much, Ajinkya. My name is Emilio Justo, and I am an ophthalmologist, an eye surgeon, a cosmetic surgeon, a TEDx speaker 2 times internationally, also an author of a best-selling book, The Power of Pause, Mastering Delayed Gratification for Success. And most importantly, I am a husband and a father to 3 beautiful children, ages 13, 17, and 20. I forgot to mention that I'm also a Cuban refugee. I was born in Cuba and came to the United States with my parents as refugees escaping Fidel Castro's communist regime.
Right. It's great. So quickly asking a question about you said you were an ophthalmologist and you're now an eye surgeon. So what inspired you transitioning from an ophthalmology to mastering technique as plastic surgeon and eventually becoming a cosmetic surgeon of ocular surgeon in Phoenix area where you stay?
Yes, and I'm in the Phoenix metropolitan area, which is in the state of Arizona in the United States. For those of you who are international and may not be familiar with the United States. So, Ajinkya, the answer to that is really twofold. Part of it is just my own inspiration because my passion for enhancing patient care and the aesthetic aspect of medicine, which the oculoplastic realm gives, partially inspired my transition from ophthalmology to cosmetic surgery. Now, understand that when I say transition, it does not mean that I abandon ophthalmology. To this day, I just started, Ajinkya, August 1st, I just started my 36th year of practice in medicine. So I know it's hard to believe because, everyone tells me that I don't look a day over 30. That's of course a joke, but yes, I've been practicing now my 36 years, and I do a combination of both ophthalmology as well as oculoplastic surgery. But the other important part of that transition is that in the United States, the way medicine is practiced and the way reimbursements are and the financial aspects of medicine is that we have seen throughout my entire career since the time I started, we have seen decreasing reimbursements from insurance companies. And early on in my career, I decided to diversify my practice by bringing in what we call here in the United States a med spa, where we offer uh, uh, non-invasive procedures and injectables to help aesthetics, and then at the same time bringing in plastic surgery procedures, such as back in the day, I was doing liposuction, I was doing facelift surgery, endoscopic brow lifts, and of course, a lot of eyelid surgery. And so it's been an evolution. So I wanted to diversify just truly from a financial standpoint because ophthalmology, which I love and I'm passionate about, uh, has just decreasing reimbursements. But what I found very quickly is that we can help our patients not only functionally by giving them better vision with cataract surgery, for example, which I do a lot of. I also do a lot of what is known as blepharoplasty. Blepharoplasty is eyelid surgery for heavy, droopy eyelids, and that helps improve patients' peripheral vision. It decreases fatigue of their eyes. Sometimes it helps them if they have chronic headaches. So we can now help patients both functionally as well as aesthetically, which is really an incredible thing because now these patients are extremely, extremely happy. Their self-esteem goes up. The word of mouth referrals is incredible. So it's been a combination of both of those things.
That's great. I think good to know that. See, whenever someone adds value to someone else's life, that's a blessing we receive from universe, right? So, a little bit about. I wanted to know about your past life when you said that you have been be a refugee. What was that life like? I mean, how did you get into medicine? What was that inspiration for you to get into medicine? What were the challenges in your early days? I want to really understand that because you said you've been moved from Cuba to US. What was the life then?
Yeah, so I was relatively young. I was about 3.5 years old, and we escaped via Mexico. So unlike a lot of Cuban refugees that came to the United States through Miami, we did not do that. We escaped via Mexico. We were in Mexico for 6 months. And then back in the 1960s, it was very common for church organizations in the United States to sponsor Cuban refugees' entry into the United States. So the church that helped us come to the United States, we settled in a town called Gary, Indiana, which is very close to Chicago.
Okay.
And my father had to work two full-time jobs. My grandparents came over a few months later, and so the church that sponsored them, they settled in a small college town in Missouri called Tarkio, Missouri. So I was actually sent, my parents actually made the decision to send me to Tarkio, Missouri to grow up with my grandparents. Why? Because again, my father was working two full-time jobs. My mother had to temporarily move 3 hours south to Indiana University to study all over again, even though in Cuba she had a doctorate in education. But when you come over from a communist country, your credentials do not transfer. So she was studying all over again in a foreign language. She didn't know any English. And so they sent me to grow up with my grandparents in Tarkio College, which was a fantastic experience because we lived in a dormitory right on the college campus. And so I was always surrounded by college students. And then finally, when I was starting fifth grade of school, my grandparents and I finally transitioned and relocated back to Indiana. By that point, my parents had saved enough money where they purchased a home south of Gary in a town called Crown Point. And my father only had to work one job. My mother was now teaching high school. And so that's really where I did what I feel the majority of my growing up. Now, as I entered high school, I did have a significant setback. I had a small, what you might call medical crisis halfway through my freshman year of high school in ninth grade. I developed one of the most severe cases of a condition called acne conglobata, known in the medical literature. And after that, I then developed a persistent fever for over 30 days that would not go away. So finally, here I was in high school sitting in the classroom, and my acne was so bad that my face literally was draining pus in front of all the other students and teachers. Just very embarrassing. Then I had this fever. Finally, I was hospitalized in Chicago to try to find out why this fever was occurring. The doctors did numerous tests, bone marrow biopsies, scans, because they thought that I had some sort of cancer that was maybe, developing inside of me. And I didn't know what was going on. I'm thinking maybe this is a slow death. But finally, after several weeks of testing, they determined that the reason for my fever was the severe acne and all the pus in my face. So I was in the hospital for 2.5 months. I had 3 surgeries, and finally I was discharged home without fever, but my face scarred forever. But at that time, even at a very young age, because I was only about 14 years old at that time, uh, I had within me a sense of obsession and resilience. And even while in the hospital, while lying in bed, my parents, one of them would drive an hour away from the hospital to our home and pick up my homework from high school and bring it to me, and I would do it as best I can. And then I just found it within me to push forward and to not let this, put me down. And as time went on, I was so committed that I ended up being valedictorian of our high school class. And I tell you this not because I'm boasting or bragging, but simply to demonstrate that, the power of being obsessed with a goal. The goal not being valedictorian. That was not the goal. The goal was pushing forward, finishing my education, not letting this medical crisis keep me down. And so I forged ahead, and I had a great high school experience after that. I was very active in athletics, in school clubs, socially. I didn't let all the scars, on my face, which you can see, I didn't let those inhibit my participation socially.
Right.
So, because I was always interested in science and it came relatively easy to me, I always thought that either I would become some type of physician, or the other option is that I was also very gifted in the sport of baseball, and I loved baseball. It was a passion for me, and so there was a point in time that I thought maybe I could go into a professional career of baseball. But I distinctly remember one weekend where I met with my parents and one of their closest friends, and we all discussed the pros and cons of either going forward with baseball or doing something else. And they used very sincere logic to just explain to me that, really, statistically speaking, the likelihood of me making it in professional baseball was much, much lower than me making it, academically in whatever field I wanted to go into. So ultimately, I made the choice that I was going to pursue my dream in medicine. And then I became extremely blessed. I mean, you can see that I've just had so many blessings in my life, even with all the negative things. God and the world has been just tremendously good to me, and I was able to get into a very unique program at the University of Michigan, a 6-year pre-medical medical program. See, in the United States, typically the path is that you go to college for 4 years, and then if you want to go to medical school, then you apply to medical school. And if you get in, then you go to medical school for 4 years. So it's 8 years. In this program at the University of Michigan, I was accepted into medical school directly out of high school. And then I did my college and medical school studies all combined in 6 years. So it was an accelerated program. So I finished as a medical doctor at the age of 23. And then after that, I did my 4 years of residency training in ophthalmology. So I finished that at the age of 27. And that's when I moved to Arizona because of the weather. I wanted the sunshine, the warm weather. And that's when I started my private practice. So I was very, very young. I mean, it's almost unheard of for someone to start a private practice at such a young age.
So quickly, I think this journey is really, really inspiring, Emilio. But I want to understand, what were the major challenges which came in your life in terms of mindset, in terms of physical challenges? Like, for example, you were on the bed when you were in the hospital. What was going in your mind that, will I be able to complete my education? How much time I'm gonna be in this hospital?
That,
Or will this cure myself? What will people say looking at my scars? So what thoughts were going on in your mind?
wow. I mean, really, you summarized it beautifully. Every single one of those things were in my mind, because I didn't know what was going on. I was under the care before being hospitalized. I had been under the care for a year or more under a dermatologist because of my severe acne, and I was on medication treating it. but it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And it was just horrific. I mean, the embarrassment in school with literally pus running down my face. And then when I developed that fever, oh my gosh, I didn't know what to think. So when I'm in the hospital, I'm thinking, man, what's going on? Am I going to survive this? Am I going to have to miss a year of school? What are people going to think about me? How is my life going to evolve? So there were just so many unknowns. But due to the grace of God and to my parents, I mean, I've always adored my parents. I'm an only child, so even though we were immigrants and we did not have much in the way of material things because, my parents didn't have money, but they gave me a tremendous amount of love and nurturing and support. And they were always with me every step of the way. And they always gave me positive feedback and always told me that I could accomplish anything that I set my mind to. So really, it's my parents that have been my rock that I depended upon early in my life. And I honestly, I owe it all to them. When I think back over my life, my parents have been my number one inspiration. And I should say my grandparents, because my grandparents were also like a set of parents to me.
So is your delayed gratification TED Talk all about your these experiences? Can we talk about that? What is your TED Talk about?
Yeah, so basically, if I can just take a quick step back. So as I've, I married later in life and I started children a little bit later in life. But my wife and I have these beautiful three children, I started reflecting back on my life. And even though inside my head, I've always had in my mind what I call a triad, three principal things that have gotten me throughout my life and have helped me create success. And these three things are: number one, self-discipline; number two, resilience and perseverance; and then number three, delayed gratification. And I've always known that in the back of my mind, but I never really verbally put it out there to the world or to friends. So I started thinking about this, and as I'm pondering my children, and of course, nowadays growing up, it's much different than when I grew up. We have all this technology, all this social media, all this desire for instant gratification. So I started thinking about the fact that, really when one pauses and when one can delay that immediate reward and instead think of a longer term objective, a reward that comes later and most likely in greater. So it's a later, greater reward, that by pausing and just letting that develop, that really we benefit so much more. But it's hard for the youth in our society to understand that, because they see so much on social media that it appears that everything occurs just suddenly, instantaneously. And that's not the way it works, at least not for 99.999% of people. So I decided I wanted to write a TEDx talk on delayed gratification. So my first talk, which is titled Delayed Gratification, Your Superpower to Success, I delivered outside of Denver, Colorado in the United States in August of 2023. Amazingly, that talk just started taking off. And I'm not exactly sure why, but I think that the relatability amongst people of striving for long-term goals resonated deeply with the viewers of that video. And so as I saw that taking off, I thought, gosh, I really need to expand upon this and perhaps make it larger and talk about other insights in the book. And that's when I started writing the book, The Power of Pause, which I had not written a book before. So that was a new experience for me. And then while I was writing the book, I thought, gosh, what other thoughts could I bring to the table? And that's when I started thinking about the obsession advantage. And so I started writing a second TEDx talk that's called Unleashing the Drive Within, the Obsession Advantage to Unprecedented Success. And what I discussed in that talk is I highlighted the positive connotation of obsession and taking away the negative connotation. So the positive connotation is one of being intensely focused on your goals, right? So the negative connotation is an unhealthy fixation, one that you might think of in a psychiatric term. But that's not what I'm talking about. When I talk about obsession, it's being, passionate and intensely focused on your goals to be able to achieve. And I think that obsession is a tremendous thing in our lives, and we should take advantage of it and really practice that obsession. So it's been an evolution, and really, when we boil it all down to the end result, the reason I did all this is that in my mind, as I mature and I'm getting a little bit older, and I think about my mortality on earth, that I'm not going to live forever. I really wanted to convey this in such a manner that my children could look back and hopefully appreciate the things that I'm talking about. And maybe someday if I have grandchildren, and then of course the world at large, I wanted to get this out to the public for whoever wants to be inspired by it. And that was really the underlying motivation for all of this.
Great. So, if I understand it correctly, Emilio, delayed gratification is you just have to think on a long-term vision goals and work towards it, is what it is. Or if you elaborate more on it, I just wanted to quickly understand because I think that people have seen in my vicinity, in my area, and my friends, my colleagues, they want instant results, right? For example, just give you an example about workout, right? People join health facility or a club to lose weight in a month, and their goals are like 5 to 6 kgs in a month. I tell them that no, this is not the right way to lose weight. If you want a healthy weight loss, plan for a 1 year and at least lose 1 kg a month, and then maybe that's a great way to lose weight. But they want shortcuts. They want some magic pill that can transform them into some a model or a supermodel in front of the mirror, and they want that result faster. Is it something related to delayed gratification that people want result faster and they don't want to wait for long term or long, they don't have patience in their life and they just want everything faster? Is it what delayed gratification is?
Absolutely. It's just not practical in most aspects of life. Now, remember, we're talking in generalities here.
Yeah.
There's always exceptions to everything. But in generalities, I think when one can work towards a larger goal and have small goals along the way and celebrate, when you achieve a milestone, celebrate it, but basically have that end in mind that you're working towards something bigger and not be focused on instant gratification. If you change the paradigm and if you change your mind, once you achieve that delayed gratification, the taste is going to be so much better because the results will be so much more profound than just getting the instant gratification. Furthermore, I truly believe that when we work towards something and we put in blood, sweat, and tears to achieve something, it's going to mean so much more to us, right? It's like, for example, if someone, well, let's use my kids as an example. If I just simply give them something, if I were to buy them a car and say, "Oh, here's a car," well, yeah, they'll be happy for the moment and they'll like having that car. But if they actually take the time to work and save money. And it may take a few years, but as they save money and then they buy their own car with their own money that they've earned with their hands and their mind, they're going to appreciate that car so much more and they're going to take care of it so much better. So it's all part of that delayed gratification. And now for me, I didn't choose delayed gratification. It was something that was just part of my life because I couldn't have instant gratification because my parents didn't have a lot of money to give me those sorts of things. So it was just part of my life that I learned without thinking about it. I learned that I just had to work hard. And if I worked hard and then I achieved things, I would celebrate it. I would be happy. And then I would go on to the next thing and then celebrate it. And that's how my career from being a student in my early years to high school, to college, to medical school, to residency, and finally into practice. And even in practice, when I started practice, I used delayed gratification in the sense that rather than, taking the money that I earned and all of a sudden buying a nice car or a nice home or things like that, no, I use that money to basically invest it back into my private practice to expand the practice, to hire good employees, to teach the employees, to educate the employees, to get good technology in the practice. And so the payoff financially really came many, many years later, to be quite honest. But that took discipline to do that because I know a lot of professionals, they start earning money and what do? They turn around and spend it right away. They don't have it within them to put on the brakes and slow down and use that delayed gratification. And ultimately, that delayed gratification has paid off for me exponentially over the years. Now, yes, it's taken many years. I grant you that. But along the way, I've had a wonderful life. I've learned so many things. The practice has expanded. I've had thousands and thousands of patients who I adore, and I've been able to help them in their life. So I've had a lot of gratification, but as far as that financial gratification that people think about, that I delayed. I delayed for many, many years.
So you said that you started your practice in 20 when you were 27, right? At that
Yes.
age, a lot of immaturity, right? No exposure to how business works, right? How to set up. Should I hire a team or should I build a system or a process or technology? Uh, what was in your mind and how did you make that effort in terms of building such a great facility, which is like, I think it's called I actually have Arizona Eye Institute and Cosmetic Laser Center in 1989, I guess, right?
Right. Yeah. So I started it in 1989. I was 27 years old. So you can do the math.
Yeah.
Um, and uh, you're absolutely correct. I had absolutely zero business experience. And that is one of the difficulties, at least in the United States in the medical field, that when we go to medical school, we're taught about, strange diseases, but we're not taught about the business of medicine. So honestly, I really had little to no idea of what I was doing. It was a challenge. It was just learning by mistakes. And actually, it was very difficult even just starting because I remember I went to bank after bank and I needed a $50,000 credit line to be able to have money so that I could pay employees,
Right,
right?
right,
And so that I could have that cash flow because it takes time in the United States, it takes time to get the money reimbursed from insurance. So you
right,
perform a service,
right,
you do an examination or you do a surgery, and you won't get paid for anywhere from 15 to 30 days later. So in the meantime, you still have to run a business. You have to pay rent, you have to pay your electricity, you have to pay your water, you have to pay your employees, et cetera, et cetera. And bank after bank refused to provide me a $50,000 credit line because I did not have any assets to pledge. And it was at the very last moment, I mean, literally the last moment, that I found a very, very small local bank that no longer exists. Unfortunately, they were taken over by big banks. But I was so loyal to them because they actually took the risk
Right.
to give me that $50,000 credit line, and so I stayed with them for years and years and years until they were bought out by a big national bank, because I'm a very loyal person in every aspect of my life, whether it's business or personal. If someone has gone the extra mile for me, I'm going to go the extra mile for them.
Right.
And so it was that small piece of the puzzle that actually started my journey. But you are absolutely correct. I mean, I did not know anything. I made plenty of mistakes. One of the early positive things that occurred is about 5 years into my practice, my office manager made the recommendation, because my lease, I was in a medical office building, which is fairly traditional, and my lease was coming up for renewal. And so my office manager said, "Hey, there's a building not too far, just 5 minutes away, a small building that is for sale. You ought to consider buying that building and turning it into an office." And that idea had never even occurred to me, but I actually pursued that. And that really was a turning point. I mean, that was a huge risk, a huge investment. I mean, because it wasn't just the investment of buying the building, I had to completely renovate the entire building. So it was, probably, I don't even remember, so long ago, but probably $1.5 million of loans that I had to take out. And but that started the process, because then I had great exposure. I had a building that was in a busy street. It had a lot of drive-by traffic. I now could pay rent to myself as the landlord. And so it really started changing, and it really changed the evolution of my practice going forward.
So that's something which you will call as a delayed gratification. And you never knew when you started as someone a fresher out of college, like a fresh doctor or a provider, and you set up a small, office with a $50,000 loan, and then 5 years, 6 years down the line, you're planning to just set up bigger office, bigger facility, right? That's something you've never thought of, but it came to you. I think that's an example of delayed gratification for me. What is your thought on that?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. It's definitely delayed gratification, and again, that's part of the reason that the money that I was earning, which, it wasn't that I was earning a ton of money because I was very new in practice, but still, what little bit I was earning, I was using that money to reinvest in the success of the practice and to pay for the building. And then 5 years later, I did it again, and I bought two other buildings actually, and so I started opening other offices. But I mean, it was difficult. I got to tell you. I mean, the financial risk and investments. I mean, the second building that I purchased was twice as large as the first building, and I had to remodel it from scratch. And so again, it was a few $1 million of loans, which is kind of scary when you're that young. When you're in your early 30s, and you're taking on such financial risk, not really knowing whether it's going to pay off in the long term. But indeed, it has paid off, and it's probably one of the best business decisions that I've ever made. I mean, to this day, I still own the three buildings, and it's a great asset to have. So if I were counseling a new doctor coming into practice, or really any professional, it doesn't matter if you're a physician or not. I mean, if you're going to be a CPA, an accountant, or an architect, or what have you, if you can own your own real estate, if that's a possibility, And it may not be from the beginning, right? When you're young and you're just getting out of school, it's not likely that you're going to have the financial strength to do that. But start thinking about that. And again, that delayed gratification where you think about that goal later in life, in your career. You can't just think about today, oh, gee, I'm going to make $1 million today. That's not likely to happen.
Right.
You have to just work hard, put in what we call in the United States the sweat equity. Put in the sweat equity of the hard work, and again, celebrate those small victories along the way, but look to the future. Look to the future, write down your goals, and make sure that your goals are large enough. Because I think as I look back over my life, I think it's far too easy for many of us to have goals that are actually too small.
Yeah.
I think you have to set a significant goal. I mean, one that is attainable, but then as you work towards that goal, there's going to be smaller goals along the way. And as you achieve them, you celebrate them and you reward yourself in some small manner. And then that keeps the motivation and the drive going.
Right. That's really, really awesome and great advice for not only doctors, but any entrepreneur who is trying to set up the business, right? I think what I've seen, Emilio, most of the entrepreneurs I mean, I think most of them, which I know, many of them struggle to take that initial risk. They don't want to invest initially. What they feel is, okay, no, I'll still work and I'll generate some revenue and then I'll invest, which I think is not the right way, because I've seen most of these successful entrepreneurs, they have taken that risk. For example, you have taken that risk of taking that first $50,000 loan, right? The credit line, and
Right.
then you moved ahead and then you still took another $1 million credit line again, right? That's something which every individual has to understand, that you have to take that risk, you have to move beyond your limit, take that out of what you can say ability, that step, and then you see how the results are. That's what I feel. And I think you've you've you explained it so nicely, that take that risk and just work towards it. Have larger goals, but smaller tasks to achieve those goals, right? And I think this is really great advice for anyone who is listening to this podcast.
Yeah,
I want to understand. Yeah, sorry.
I'm sorry. Sorry. Yes, I'm sorry. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. I think in our life, in every aspect of our life, whether it's professionally, even personally, we have to be willing to get out of our comfort zone, and we have to be willing to take on risk.
Yeah,
And that's something that I do think, as I think back over my life, that I have been, for the most part, I have been willing to take on risk. Now, I haven't always been successful. I've made some bad business decisions, believe me, which I'm happy to talk to you about if you want.
yeah,
But I've made some bad business decisions where I've lost a tremendous amount of money,
mhm,
but I learned from them, right? So in our life, professionally and personally, we have to be willing, A, to take on risk, and two, or B, when we fail at something, don't think of that as a setback, but rather think of it merely as a temporary step back. So, not a setback, but a temporary step back. And then you have to be able to bounce forward and continue on with by progressing. And then that's where the what I call progression requires obsession, right? Because to progress forward, you have to be obsessed. You have to be passionate. Passion, it has to be in your soul about what you want to achieve. And if you really are passionate and you have that obsession within you, truly, I believe that you can achieve anything. It may not be tomorrow,
yeah,
it may not be next week, but you can achieve it. But there's got to be a certain level of risk taking. I mean,
yeah,
not risk taking in terms of going to Las Vegas and blowing money. That's not what I talk about. I mean, it has to be risk that is based on reality, and you've thought through the consequences, and how much risk there is, right? So I'm not talking about being flippant about risk. I'm talking about using methodical risk, and sometimes you're going to win, sometimes you're going to lose.
I want to know some of your mistakes. I'm really interested to know what mistakes you made and how do you reflect on that now?
Yeah, I'll give you two examples. Well, one example that comes to mind, which is more specifically to my profession as a physician and as a cosmetic surgeon, is early on as I was embracing new technologies in the cosmetic arena, I started purchasing different types of lasers that were very, very fancy and had just come out, and there was so much hype, right? And one of the lasers has been tremendous, the CO2 laser, the carbon dioxide laser. To this day, I use it all the time. Now I've gotten new ones. It's not the same one from 30 years ago, but that's been a tremendous success for me. But there have been other lasers where literally I spent a few $100,000 that just went nowhere. I mean, it just didn't pan out, and it was just a complete waste of money. And I think back, gosh, if I had that money now, I could do a lot with two or $300,000, right? So what that taught me, and there's some other examples besides the lasers. There's other technologies that I embraced and really panned out to be nothing. So what it's taught me professionally in the medical arena is not to necessarily strive to be the first person in your area to have the latest and greatest technology. Yes, you get a lot of publicity if you're the first one to have a certain technology. You can publicize it if you want to put it in an advertisement. So you'll get a bunch of people that'll come into your office because of that advertisement. But if that technology ends up not really being that successful, then not only have you done your patients a disservice by not giving them the best care possible, but also you've done yourself and your practice a disservice by spending tons and tons of money on something that will go away in a short amount of time. So as I evolved and matured in my practice, I started thinking, no, I don't need to be the first one. I'll wait 6 months, I'll wait a year, I'll see how it goes. And if the technology truly continues to be successful, then I'll consider bringing it into my practice. But I don't need to be the first one. I don't need to be the one who's going to determine whether it sinks or swims. So that's more in the medical arena. Now, on a personal level, this is the story that's in my book, and I've shared it with other people, and it's a very embarrassing story, I must tell you, but I share it nonetheless because I think it's a learning story to learn from. And that is about 20 years ago, I abandoned my core principle. I preach delayed gratification, which 99% of the time I'm pretty good at. But 20 years ago, I abandoned my principle and I looked for instant gratification. And what do I mean specifically? Well, in the United States, about 20 years ago, real estate was a hot market, and residential real estate was peaking. The prices of residential homes were going sky high, and the mortgage industry was so unregulated that a person could get a home loan, a mortgage on a residential piece of property for little to no money down. I mean, all you had to do is sign the paperwork, and here's the house.
Okay.
And so my wife kept telling me that I was really going crazy and that this was a bad idea. But still, I was committed to that instant gratification. And no exaggeration, within 1 year, within 12 months, I acquired 20 residential real estate properties, each valued at between $400,000 to $500,000. And I put little money down. And quickly I found that as I was trying to rent those, because these were rental properties, as I was renting them, the money that I was getting in rent was far less than the money that I was paying the bank in mortgage.
Right.
And I quickly learned that I could not keep that going because it was a negative cash flow and I just couldn't keep it going. So I finally had to swallow my pride and I started getting rid of the properties as quickly as I could because I mean, I literally, I kid you not, I had saved so hard during my career and I pretty much blew all the money I had saved. I mean, it was probably about $1.5 million and I lost it all because of this real estate fiasco and I was chasing instant gratification. So thanks to my wife, my wife, although she told me not to do it, she was still amazingly loving and supportive. And she looked at me and she said, "Look, life has dealt you lemons. It's now your turn to take those lemons and make sweet lemonade." And after that, I learned my lesson to not chase that instant gratification. And I came back to my core principles of delayed gratification. I focused on my career again. And since that time, my career has just gone sky high. It's just exponentially gone up when I really used my principles of self-discipline, resilience, and delayed gratification. So it's an embarrassing story, and I hate to admit that I made such a stupid mistake, but it's the reality.
Yeah, I think yeah, life teaches us a lot of great lessons. It all depends upon how you learn from it, right? And if you just take that as, oh, this happened with me, and then you just stick to it and bring in all depression in your mind, I think it's not going to work. You have to just say, yes, I did a mistake. Now I want to know how I do not make this mistake in future and how I plan a better future for myself. I think that's something which I learned from your examples, right? But for people who are listening to this podcast, what would you like to advise them in terms of their lives, in terms of their challenges, in terms of their goals, aspirations? What would you want to, express your feelings towards them?
Well, the thing I like to talk about, which I also believe to my soul, is that I think in every aspect of life, and regardless of what your profession is, it doesn't matter. But both personally and professionally, we have to stay grounded. We have to have an attitude of gratitude, right? No matter if we encounter these obstacles and these failures like I encountered, we have to be grateful for what we've been given in this life, what God has afforded us to do. Um, and we have to stay humble. Humility can be a challenging thing, but I've always tried my best. I mean, maybe I'm not perfect, but I've tried my best with my patients, with my family. I've tried to stay humble because we all have wonderful, wonderful talents that are God given. And my talents may be different from your talents, but your talents are equally as wonderful as mine. It doesn't matter if I'm a doctor and you're in IT, wonderful. We just have to be grateful for what we're given, and we have to stay humble, um, and we have to be willing to embrace failure. I go back to that failure. We have to be willing to embrace it, even rejoice and just say, hey, okay, so I failed, but I learned something. And I'm going to use this to now take the next step in my life. It's okay that I failed. We all failed. If anyone tells you that, oh, their life has been perfect and they've never failed and they know every decision to make and they've never made a bad decision, boy, I would run the other way because that person is not being honest with you. So I think embracing failure, having an attitude of gratitude, and having humility in life uh, is key in any aspect, in any profession.
Right. Talking about your book, if someone, so is it available on Amazon now?
Yes, it's actually available pretty much in every retail outlet. So it's a bestseller on Amazon. I also narrated it myself, so it's available on Audible for those people who like audiobooks. And I must say, I really enjoyed the process of narrating the book. It was just a super enjoyable process. But it's also available on all the other outlets. So it's available on Barnes and Noble and Walmart and Target and places like that. So really, it should be available in most anywhere.
How can people reach out to you if they want some advice from you, like a coaching or a mentorship? How can people reach out to you?
Yes, so I have a personal website that is different from my practice website, and that website is Dr. Emilio Justo, and that's spelled DrEmilioJusto, dremiliojusto.com. And through that website, they can see everything. There are links to my TEDx talks, there's links to Amazon for the book. There's all sorts of media articles and podcast recordings. And there's a contact page. If you fill out the contact page with your name and email uh, and put in whatever question, that will come directly to me and I will answer it usually very promptly in 24 hours or less. I'm very good about checking emails. And I'm happy. I mean, I have other people that I mentor, both again personally and professionally. And again, I'm at a phase in my life that I really want to share what I've learned with the world at large. It's not that I'm trying to keep it hidden. I want people to benefit from the little things that I've learned. I haven't learned everything. I'm not suggesting that I know everything, but what I have learned, I definitely want to share with those around me, so that hopefully their life can be successful and inspiring and filled with the joy and fulfillment that I've had in my life.
Absolutely. And do you have your social media handles like Facebook, Instagram? Do you have them?
Yes. So most of them, like Instagram, it's at Emilio Justo MD, Emilio MD. So Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter or X are all Emilio Justo MD. LinkedIn is also Emilio Justo MD. And the only one that's a little different is Facebook is Dr. Emilio Justo, and Doctor is DR, so DrEmilioJusto. So the Facebook is Dr. Emilio Justo. My YouTube channel is at Dr. Emilio Justo. But all the other ones, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter and LinkedIn, those are Emilio Justo MD.
Right. So yeah, I think thanks for giving that information, Emilio. And this was really great interaction. I've learned a lot from you, and I will be in touch with you from now onwards. I'm gonna ping you, I'm gonna message you because I have so many questions I receive from so many people, right? But there could be some times where I do not have the answer and know when I want to reach out to you. So I'm gonna connect with you on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. We are connected already. But I think, yeah, this was really, really a great discussion, a great talk. And thanks for sharing all your experiences and inspiring people to grow in their lives and build that invincible mindset, right? So I think this was really great interaction. And anyone who wants to reach out to Emilio, please listen to this podcast, understand the handles which he has mentioned. And I would recommend that you reach out to him because you will definitely get that valuable insight which Emilio has to give you as an advice, as a suggestion, as in mentorship, as in coaching, whatever you feel like. Because, yeah, delayed gratification is something you need to learn. There is no instant gratification. He has given an example about that. But yeah, delayed gratification, you need to imbibe that in your life and understand what's the benefit out of it. So I really want to thank you, Emilio, for joining us today. And this was really, really, really helpful for us. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. I really appreciate your time and enthusiasm, and thank you for the opportunity.
You have a great day. Bye bye. Take care.